even if you don't feel ready, take the same confidence that you have in the office, in the clinic, in the hospital, and take that to social media because there's literally 6 billion people who are waiting for a doctor like you to speak positivity, to speak education into their life and to make a difference.
Welcome back to the Med Creator 101 podcast, the go-to podcast for HCPs on all things social. I'm Mimi Banks, founder of MB Social, and I'm here as always with my co-host, board-certified dermatologist and dermfluencer, Dr. Dustin Portella.
Thank you, Mimi. Always good to be here. And today we're thrilled to welcome to the podcast Dr. Tommy Martin, a dual board-certified physician, both in internal medicine and pediatrics. He's better known as Dr. Tommy Martin on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, where he has over a combined 4 million followers. He's been a keynote speaker for the World Health Organization and an ambassador for the National Infectious Disease Society of America. Dr. Tommy Martin, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, of course. Dustin, Mimi, it is incredible to be here with you guys. Such an honor. I feel like, I have known you guys for maybe 5 to 7 years, and it's nice to finally get to connect through video.
I know. Isn't it crazy how you can feel like you know someone through social media, and then you realize you actually haven't met before?
That literally happens to me all the time. I'll be talking to my wife and I'll be like, yeah, you know, my good friend. And she's like, Tommy, you've never met them.
Totally.
That is true. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny. So speaking of your wife, or just speaking of you in general, before we start and talk about social, we like to get to know our guests personally. Are you open to answering a few questions?
I'll answer any question you want.
Oh, wow. So before, I think it's worthwhile asking, what's the quickest you've ever gotten ready and had breakfast?
Oh, you're funny, Mimi. So Mimi's asking that because before this podcast, I just got back from a run and I had 5 minutes before the podcast. And so I showered, put on scrubs, and ate 3 rice cakes with PB Fit before the podcast. So about 4 minutes.
Wow. That's some sort of record, I think. Dustin, what about you?
Oh, me? Goodness. It's definitely under 10 minutes when I've been in a pinch, get up and throw on scrubs, get out the door. And I guess it depends on if I decide I have to shower. You know, that concept, like, do you have a job where you shower before work or after work? I have the shower before work type of job, but sometimes I'm okay even if I don't shower before work. Thankfully, it doesn't happen often. I have only slept through my alarm a couple times in my life. So,
and scrubs make it a lot easier.
They make it so much easier. There's a lot of liberty in medicine where you can throw on scrubs and you can look disheveled and people just assume, I must have had a case overnight or something. Maybe not so much in dermatology, but in other specialties for sure.
That's so right. You don't have to think at all. You can just put it on and not actually get dressed in the truest sense. So a little bit less invasive, TikTok or YouTube?
For me, TikTok. I would love to get into YouTube, but YouTube is just, you have to spend so much time doing it. Whereas TikTok, I could just make a video really quickly and post it up.
Green screen or Stitch?
Oh, green screen. I don't know if I've ever used the Stitch feature.
Oh, that's interesting. We should talk about that for sure. Running or strength training?
Strength training for sure.
Dustin?
Nowadays it would be strength training. I used to exclusively be a runner, but I've enjoyed the strength training a lot more. I feel like I can, at my advanced age, do that better.
Your advanced age. Wait, how old are you?
I am coming up on 42. There's a trend going on right now where people are posting the top song on the day they were born. I put out a video that did pretty well. It's like, is everybody just comfortable putting your full birth date out there on the internet? Because people are screenshotting and showing their birthday. So I did the trend, but I picked March 13th, 1967, just to see who would call me out.
And what did they say?
Oh, people are like, wait, there's no way. And, the caption was just like, thank goodness for sunscreen.
That is incredible. And speaking of strength training, you have gotten jacked, Dustin. It's been impressive to see how far you've come over the past couple of years.
Yeah, thank you. It takes a lot of time and effort. I started lifting in 2018, so it's quite a process. I did a physique competition in 2023.
And placed.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do anything that you really put your mind to, because I was quite a good runner before and decided to make a switch and just do something different.
That's amazing.
It's really a testament of you can do anything you put your mind to it. So let's talk social.
Dr. Martin, I'll call you Tommy. Before millions of likes and viral videos, where did your social media journey begin? How long have you been on social media and telling your story?
Yeah, so it started in 2014. So I've been on there for a long time. And it started because in medical school, I was meeting with tons of medical students about how to study, how to do well in medical school, all of these different things. So probably meeting 10 to 15 times a day with different students. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, Phoebe, said, Tommy, you are going to fail out of medical school if you do not start studying. Like you cannot just meet with students all day long. Why don't you start a YouTube channel? So I had an iPad mini, the first generation, and I started a YouTube channel with my iPad mini. I would make my content, edit my content, and upload my content with the iPad mini. So in 2014 is when it began. And I said, if it helped one person, I'd never stop making content.
Well, you certainly helped a lot more than one person. And we kind of get a sense for what got you started. So you were mostly trying to help people do better in school and prepare to go to medical school. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's how it first started with like vlogging my day in the life as a medical student and just encouraging people like how to study for step 1, step 2, and then clinical rotations and things of that nature.
Was it just based on what you did and like your approach to things and said, so many people asked me, I'm just going to share?
Yeah, pretty much. And coming from someone that, almost failed out of medical school initially because I was struggling so bad. And I saw a learning strategist, learned a lot of tips that helped me study, and then ended up doing extremely well in medical school and doing extremely well on my boards. And so a lot of people at my medical school kind of knew that journey. And so they wanted advice like, how did you overcome, such hardship and learning difficulties? And so I think that's where a lot of it came from. And so it led to just making content on it.
You talk about content now, but in 2014, I'm sure it was something different. It wasn't even called content. Like, how did you know to like make videos or to even put anything online?
It was just because Phoebe told me to. I have no idea. I will say that in terms of like studying for step 1, which for listeners that may not be in medicine, that's like a big board exam we have to take before you get into residency. And Phoebe was like, Tommy, obviously you want to help people and you watch videos on YouTube to figure things out. Why don't you just start making videos?
And then how did you know your strategy? I'm sure if you looked at your videos today, they're probably very different. What was your first video like? Do you remember?
Oh my, it is so bad. So bad. When I uploaded it, I was so excited. I was like, Phoebe, I made my first video. I'm going to post it. And she watched it and she said, Tommy, that's terrible. Like, what happened? Like, you're so good at public speaking. And it's like you turn the camera on and forget how to talk. But I was like, I already made it. I'm going to post it. So I posted it.
And what was the feedback? What was the reception? How did that go?
It was all really positive. I mean, my first video, I think, was 20 something minutes. Obviously, I didn't know what I was doing. And throughout the first maybe 6 months of YouTube, I ended up getting 1,000 subscribers. And that was just with an iPad mini, first generation, making my content on it, literally filming my content on it. So the response was really, really good. I mean, I couldn't believe it because the content obviously wasn't the greatest, but I guess people still resonated with it.
Well, that shines through with your authenticity and everything. And at some point, your content has transitioned from less day in the life to more just strictly education with the knowledge that you've accumulated through medical school and residency. When did that kind of transition happen?
I think as content creators, it's always transitioning. And I think part of it is due to us evolving as medical professionals and evolving as people, and our personalities change over time. Our passions for what we're doing and things like that change. And then also what's needed in the world. And so I think as all of these things change, so is my content. And over time it has changed. I think the biggest change was when short form content came about, really kind of popularized by TikTok. And so I think that's when my medical content drastically changed to make more short form content than long form content. And in terms of the educational piece, I think that I make content about what I'm passionate about. And so everybody thinks that you need to niche down, and maybe some people do, but my attitude behind it is that whatever I'm passionate about, I believe is where I can provide the most value. And that's what I'm going to make content on. So I make content about my family, about my faith, about medicine, about medical misinformation, about my fitness goals, how I get there, about my son with a rare genetic disorder, like so many different things I make content on, but it's because it's what lights me up, what I'm passionate about, and what I'm knowledgeable about.
Well, I think that's key for success on social media is you just have to be yourself. You have to talk about what interests you. and not always doing something that just caters to an audience, what you think other people are going to expect. Because if it doesn't bring forth that fire within you, people will tell. And I think that really is something that you're great at with your content. So a question that I wanted to ask is, how have your goals changed? But it kind of sounds like your goals haven't changed. Your goal has been to help people and talk about what lights you up. And that can change over time as to what the content is, but the underlying why behind the content doesn't seem to have changed a lot.
Yeah, not at all. It's the exact same. And I think it's a constant battle because like my why is to help one person. But in the world of social media, it's so easy to get caught up on the likes, the comments, the views, and things of that nature. But if I have a video that hits 100 million views and it helped no one, then that video was pointless. Whereas if I have a video that maybe hit 5 views, but every single one of those people said that it impacted their life, I would say that video is so much more valuable than the one that hit 100 million views.
That's a great perspective to have, especially for anybody starting out on social media who feels like nothing is happening because a video gets 5 views or 500 views. I think it's always helpful to imagine doing your content in an audience with that many people, and it completely changes the perspective. If you had a chance to deliver a 1-minute message to 10,000 people, that's very impactful. That's a lot of faces to see. And sometimes people get discouraged when their videos only get a few thousand views. But it's important to know that when you have that underlying goal of, I want to help one person, I want somebody to walk away from this and their life is better, that is a much healthier approach to social media. It limits your burnout. It limits the discouragement.
It's true because it can be psychologically very challenging on social when you put so much effort into it, especially now. If you've been doing this since 2014, it's a long time, and so focused on the numbers, and the numbers change and the algorithm, and you just get worried about keeping yourself at a certain level. But to know that it's about sharing your passion, it's about sharing who you are, which is also a new dimension, Dustin, because we've talked to a lot of people, a lot of HCPs, and oftentimes it's one part of being an HCP. It's focusing on their specialty. But what's interesting here is that you're very open with your faith, with your son. And so I think probably a lot of your community is attached to you or follows you or engages with you because of the holistic content, because it's multidimensional. And these are the different pieces of who you are, because you don't often see who somebody is.
Yeah, and I think that is so important. And as healthcare professionals, a lot of people think that they have to just be a doctor. I have a podcast called We Are Human, and it highlights that, no, we are so much more than a doctor. Being a doctor is probably one of the least interesting things about my life, and probably one of the least important things about my life. Do not get me wrong. I love being a physician, and I believe it's one of the greatest careers in the world, but it does not even compare to being a father. It doesn't compare to being a husband. It doesn't compare to advocating for my son and his rare diagnoses. Being a doctor is important to me, but there are so many other things in my life that make me who I am that without the other things, I would probably be much more lost than I would be without the doctor title. And so I think it's so important for people to ground themselves in more than their profession. And when they can share that online, I really think it helps connect with community, help connect with people, and really show who you are and build trust with the internet.
So would you say, Dustin and I also always think about advice for other HCPs. So if someone's in their residency, if somebody is in their fellowship, that it's okay to then share more personal aspects and personal parts of yourself?
1,000%. I mean, you obviously have to be respectful, that you have to be accurate, you have to be evidence-based, you have to do all those things. And I will say how much you want to share is a very individual decision, right? And so I always tell people to be as authentic and transparent as they can. Authenticity, it should be 100% all the time, no matter what. Transparency is very individualized, and everybody has a different threshold of which they feel okay with being transparent. Some people do not want to share their children online at all, and I respect that completely. So every person is a little bit different. And I think the degree to which you want to be transparent is up to your own comfort.
What I want to get at is balancing that personal versus professional life online. And would you have been sharing those aspects of your family life regardless of if your son had been given this diagnosis or not? Or did this become, I want to advocate in this cause? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. I think I could actually tell you a straight answer because we didn't know his diagnosis until he was about 8 months old. And so for the first 8 months of his life, we were still sharing our life. I will say once we received the diagnoses, especially as rare as it is, that he's one of 400 children in the world with this diagnosis.
Wow.
It led to a lot more advocacy and a lot more awareness and a lot more just telling the world, like, look, there are children out there that are extremely rare, that are extremely valuable, and their voices need to be heard as well.
So, in making that decision to go online with your family and other things, was this something you felt obligated to do, or it's just who you are and it was part of the authenticity that you had always brought to your content?
I think a little bit of both. I think that it is part of who I am and being very open and being very authentic with everything. But then I also felt like the platform that I have that God has granted to me, I believe that I should utilize it. I should use it to spread awareness, to advocate, to raise money, to do all of these things for children that are like my son.
I think that's incredibly powerful. And again, just really fits with your authenticity. And I just want to give you the opportunity to tell us what that diagnosis is and the organization that people could look at if they're interested in contributing to raising money for that.
Yeah, of course. So it's called Lamb-Schafer syndrome. So it's named after the two guys who figured out the diagnoses. And Lamb-Schafer syndrome is characterized by a deletion in the SOX5 gene on chromosome 12. And the severity of the disorder depends on how big of a deletion there is in that chromosome. And Oliver's deletion is pretty large, but he has done extremely, extremely well. And so the disorder is generally characterized by global developmental delay. So that means gross motor, fine motor, speech delay. And then there's a slew of other characteristics that can be associated. It just, again, depends on what genes are deleted. And so we received Oliver's diagnosis at 8 months old, and he's been in therapies. He's actually been in therapy since he was 6 months old. So he's received speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, visual therapy, swim therapy, and ABA therapy since he was very young. And he is doing incredible. Truthfully, there's not very many organizations for Lamb-Schafer syndrome. We are creating one called Oliver Smiles. So it's going to be called the Oliver Smiles Foundation. And it's going to be to raise money for children with rare genetic disorders and provide resources for them, whether that be playgrounds in cities or whatever it may be that are all inclusive. But if you do want to learn more about Lamb-Schafer syndrome, you could look at lss.org, I believe, or if you search LSS, which stands for Lamb-Schafer syndrome.org, you'll be able to find it there.
Well, we'll have a link to that in the podcast show notes. And please let us know when the foundation is open and able to receive donations. We'd like to amplify that as well.
I will for sure. One other quick plug is I have a children book series releasing in 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited about it. I'm not going to give too many of the details, but it is also to raise awareness and advocate for children with developmental disabilities.
That's incredible. And you have to also let us know when that comes out so we can share that. So this leads me to a question that I'm sure is top of mind for everybody. How do you balance it? How do you make it all work? You're a physician, and then you have a much bigger life outside of the hospital and outside of your day job, being a father, an advocate, a social media powerhouse, as Dustin put it, and now an author, and I'm sure an ambassador, and I'm sure that there's a lot more that we haven't talked about. What is your process? How do you make it all work?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing I'll say is I cut out all the weeds. And what that means is anything that I do not enjoy and anything that does not fill up my cup and anything that I'm not passionate about, I do not do. So all of the things that I do in my daily life fill me up. So I literally get energy by doing all of these things because it makes me just so happy and so enthusiastic and just so driven to be doing all of these things. And so that is kind of like my starting point. The second part is having a very strict schedule. And so people have seen from one of my day in the life videos are going viral right now. And I'm getting a lot of shade for not getting enough sleep during my weeks on service. But my day in the life is pretty intense, especially when I'm on service. But it's having a strict schedule where I wake up super early. So generally around 3:45. And then the time between like 3:45 and 6 a.m. when my family wakes up is time for me. And that some mornings that consist of working out. Other mornings it might consist of making content. It might consist of writing, journaling, Bible studying. Whatever that means during that time period is my me time. My kiddos wake up around 6, and depending if I'm working or not, from 6 till they go to school, I'm spending time with them. And then when they're at school is when I do podcasts like this or a lot of other meetings that I have or exercise if I'm training for something. Or if I'm at work, then obviously I'm in the hospital. So I'd say like having a very, very strict schedule. And then The third thing I'd say is do not get hung up on perfection. And as a healthcare professional, I think this is important because you have to be evidence-based. So you have to be perfect in the accuracy of the content that you're giving. But the actual video, the sound, the text, all that stuff does not have to be perfect. And I feel like so often people get hung up and will not post things because it's not perfection. And that's not what people are looking for. People are looking for real people, people who are authentic. And so when I think of something, I post it. When I shoot a video and post it. And so I think those would be my three biggest tips. So follow what you're passionate about, have a strict schedule, and be okay with not being perfect.
You clearly did that for the first one without listening to Phoebe.
Yeah.
Or the fourth one is listen to the Phoebe in your life, take their advice, take their suggestions, follow their passion.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Truthfully, there's no way I'd be able to do anything I do without Phoebe. She is incredible. She's a huge support system. I mean, what started all of this, and she's kind of like the backbone, I think, that holds everything together.
And so we'd like to talk also about your actual content creation process. What is that like? Do you use tools, systems, habits? Do you batch content? What does that look like?
This answer is going to be very atypical. It looks very professional right here. But if you could see what's holding up my camera, it's a Pampers box. So my camera right now is being propped up on a Pampers box. I do have a nice light, but I do not really use too much for my content creation. Most of the time, it's all used from my cell phone. I film 99.5% of my content from my cell phone. And truthfully, an idea comes in my head and I turn on my camera and I start shooting content. So I'd say that's the majority of my content. The other part of it would be that if people tag me in videos, then I'll react to those videos. And that's kind of how I find the videos to react to, is because if I have a moment to make content, I'll see what I'm tagged in, and then I will make content on whatever that is. The other thing is whatever's relevant in the world today. So if there's a huge outbreak of, say, salmonella from strawberries, then I'll make a piece of content on that. If the political climate, if there's nonsense going on with that, then I'll make content on that. And so it's kind of like whatever's relevant. But again, I just turn my camera on and start filming. Now, for reacting to different videos and things, I will usually download whatever video it is without the watermark. And then I will react to that video using the green screen on TikTok. So I use TikTok to film all of my content on. And then I'll use the green screen feature on TikTok. Then I'll save that video without the watermark. And thankfully, over the past year, I've had a video editor before I did everything on my own. And so I will then send that to my video editor and he'll send it back to me and then I'll post it. Once it's posted to TikTok, then my sister, who I adore and love, quick plug for her. So she's a single mom, has always worked extremely, extremely hard. The world we live in today, it's hard to make ends meet as a single parent. And so I was like, Erin, let me create you a job. I need help. You need help. Let's help each other. So I hired her to repurpose all of my content from TikTok onto all the other platforms. And since doing that, she has made my Facebook absolutely explode. So she's grown my Facebook from like 300,000 to 1.3 million in the course of a year, which has just been absolutely insane. And now she does it for, I think, 9 other creators.
Oh, really? Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, so she has been helping so many people grow and she just has such a good heart. I'm just so happy for her. So that's pretty much my whole content system, I would say. Turn my phone on, record, send it to my editor, and my sister repurposes it to other places.
Tommy, the other thing that I want to address, which is a question that many physician content creators have as they get on social media, is brand partnerships. And I'd like to know how you approach brand partnerships, the brands you choose to work with, and how you bring your authenticity to a paid promotion.
How relevant. I just posted this on my stories last night. Perfect question. So I would say as healthcare professionals, you should have an extremely, extremely strict lens in which you view all brand partnerships. And you should only ever work with brands that are 100% evidence-based. And if they are not evidence-based, regardless how much money they offer you, regardless the deal, regardless of the contract, the answer should be no. And to be transparent, as I am, in residency, I turned down a $90,000 deal for 6 videos. And then here this year, I turned down over a $300,000 deal for 1 video a month. And the reason being is because I did not believe these companies were 100% evidence-based. And so I share that with you. Obviously, I'm able to do that from a place of privilege when I work as a physician and I have a steady income. It'd be much harder if I really, really needed the money. But I share that with you because as a medical professional, these companies will shill out tons and tons of money and they do not care about you. They do not care about your medical license. They do not care about what happens to you on the internet. All they care is that an MD or DO or whatever kind of doctor you are promotes their products. So I would say only go with companies that are evidence-based, only go with companies that you truly use, that you truly believe in, and that you would back even without the money.
Let me ask you a follow-up question to that, because that's super interesting about the evidence base. And saying no, there's so much power in it. And I believe fully that it should be a product that you would use. But we've never talked about that part, Dustin, about whether it's evidence-based or not. Can you share, without, you don't have to share the company, but what led you to understand that it wasn't evidence-based or more specific so someone could detect what they're maybe offered, that the deal is kind of too good to be true or it's not in their best interest?
Yeah, I will say that I probably take this further than most people. Okay, so I'll give one example of a brand deal. I won't say the brand, but I'll give the context of it. So I was asked to promote vitamin D, vitamin C, and melatonin. All three of those things are completely fine. But to promote those and say that people need them would be incorrect and not something a doctor should do. Unless you're vitamin C deficient, unless you're vitamin D deficient, and unless you have certain reasons to take melatonin, you really do not need to take those three things daily. And I was offered large amounts of money to promote those. Now, one could argue, well, there's nothing wrong with those three. They technically could be evidence-based. So why don't I just take my bag and make the video? And I think as physicians, we should be held to such a higher standard that not only do the products need to be evidence-based, but the way that they're portrayed also needs to be in line with the current evidence and literature.
I think that's a great approach. Would you say that you say no to more opportunities than you say yes to?
Oh, yeah.
I knew what the answer is going to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I say no to 90% of things, maybe higher than that.
I think that's an important point for early physician creators to understand. And I see people who want to get into it for the brand partnerships. And I just have never seen anybody that gets into it for that reason be successful over the long term, because it's not the right reasons. They're not bringing their authenticity to it. And as soon as they get the smallest audience, they're selling out to a company, and it sacrifices authenticity in the short term for short-term revenue and doesn't really build a long-term partnership with your audience.
Right. Dustin, we could be as authentic as possible. I don't even know if you remember this, but I had a brand partnership come to me about a laser hair removal device, and I loved it and I use it and I still use it. But if I remember correctly, I messaged you and I was like, hey, Dustin, from what I could tell, this is evidence-based and these work. What are your thoughts on it? And if I remember correctly, I believe you messaged me back saying that, yeah, it's evidence-based, blah, 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 blah. And then I ended up moving forward with it. If it wasn't you, it was another.
Yeah, no, we did talk about that. I do recall.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's one of those things I probably told you, it's not hair removal, it's hair reduction. It has to be done consistently, even after the initial series. So there's a correct approach to it if it's the right skin type, all those things. That's details we don't have to go into. But yeah, you did. And I think that speaks to the research that you do behind things.
Even if you do not know 100%, speak to an expert in the field and make sure that it is aligned with the research that you're looking up.
That's a great point. The other point I just wanted to go back to before we close, I can't believe already how quickly this has gone, is your team. So you don't have to do it alone. You mentioned having an editor. How did you find your editor? What does that process look like? Because that's also part of it. I know it's not about perfect videos, but still the editing process can be arduous. It can be a point that people feel paralyzed because they don't necessarily have those skills.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll first start off in saying I have not had an editor for very long. And so I was able to grow the majority of my following before having an editor. And so in saying that, I would just encourage the content creators that maybe do not have the funds yet to get an editor. Just know it's still okay to start. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to have an editor. And with the software, with the social media platforms now, it's pretty easy to do it yourself. And just know it doesn't have to be flashy or fancy. Turn your camera on, record what you're passionate about, let it fly into the universe. And then when you have the funds to get an editor, get an editor. I came across mine through luck, truthfully, or he messaged me on Instagram. and he also had a Fiverr account, and we hit it off really well, and I've been with him since. And so my team consists of me, my editor, and my sister.
I love that so much.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's the three of us, and hopefully we'll be together for my sister and I will be together forever, obviously. But my editor and I, hopefully he never leaves me. I don't know what I'd do without him now.
Well, I've got lots of options if you ever find yourself in a pinch. So,
hey, there we go.
And I love that aspect of social media is the collaboration off camera. Because Tommy and I, we've been talking for years and bouncing ideas off each other, seeking tips and advice. And it's been incredibly helpful for me. I've benefited tremendously and really value your content and the authenticity that you bring to the world. And just encourage you to keep that up because you are making an impact on me. So there's at least your one person. So I appreciate that. For any healthcare provider that's interested in getting into this journey, they don't know where to start. What advice would you give them to encourage them to hit play like you did in 2014?
Yeah, I would say, again, that if you help one person, it's worth it. And I think Dustin had said something that's incredibly powerful earlier, and that is, a lot of people think that they're afraid to speak in front of a room of like maybe 10 or 20 people, or they get caught up in all the views and things of that nature. And they're like, oh my gosh, I've only got 500 views, but yet they're worried about, speaking in front of 20 people. And I think that the power of social media is so incredible that not only can it lead to opportunity, like financial opportunities, like obviously that's a benefit, but it could lead to life-changing transformation for so many people. I know that we're running short on time, but I will just pull up my phone really quickly. And so on my phone, I keep a My Why folder.
Oh.
Yeah, these are screenshots of either comments or messages or things that people have left me about how my content has made a difference in their life. And so I received a comment, and this person had said I could talk about their journey, but it's a patient that I had in residency, and I had them all 4 years throughout my time in residency. And they messaged me and they said, Dr. Tommy, I just want to thank you so much for the time that I had with you in Arkansas, but just know that even though you've been gone for 3 years, that you've still been my doctor. And I still watch your content and follow your advice. And you'd be so happy to know that I've lost significant amount of weight and my A1C is now within normal limits and my cholesterol is now within normal limits. And so even if it was just that one person, it makes all the content worth it. He was such an incredible patient. And I didn't know he was still following my social media content. One more story would be another patient who also is okay with me talking about their journey, but I had them in residency as well. And they messaged me on Facebook and said, this was my physician when I was intubated in the medical ICU. And they didn't know that I could hear them talking to me every day, but it really made a difference in my care and made me not give up. He'd come in and talk to me every day as if I was awake. And now seeing him on social media, I cannot thank him enough. And he was such an incredible doctor or something along those lines. And so just know that the worlds collide and you have such a profound impact on every patient that you see. And that same profound impact that you have with the patients in your office, you could have on social media as well. So I would say, even if you don't feel ready, take the same confidence that you have in the office, in the clinic, in the hospital, and take that to social media, because there's literally 6 billion people who are waiting for a doctor like you to speak positivity, to speak education into their life and to make a difference.
Wow.
Mic drop right there. Absolutely beautiful. I think this will be one of the most emotionally impactful episodes that we've shared to date. And just can't thank you enough for the person that you are and the things that you shared today.
Yeah, of course.
We talked about this briefly, but if someone is probably really interested now in following you, where can they find you on social?
Yeah, it's Dr. Tommy Martin on all platforms: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat now because of Dustin. Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you for your time today, literally running back to get on this episode with us. We're grateful for the time and we'll be excited to continue to watch everything that you have coming out, a children's book series, a foundation, and probably so many more projects throughout the course of your career. Thank you to the audience for joining us for this episode of MedCreator 101. And without a doubt, you've taken away something powerful and impactful from this episode. Follow us on MedCreator 101 on Instagram. Send us your messages, your questions, and tag us as you're listening to those episodes. And we'll see you on the next one.